What was the first 3D video game? That question has always been difficult to answer. Are we counting 3D looking games or actually 3D games? However, there's one answer most will give. Super Mario 64. But is this true? Why do people always say this? How is it still so well known? Join me today as I answer these questions. This is Flashback Gaming. Mario was first introduced in 1981, known then as Jumpman, in the arcade classic Donkey Kong. He would later get his own game, Mario Bros., where his iconic brother Luigi was introduced. However, as Nintendo was developing the Nintendo Entertainment System, they needed a big day one game. Something revolutionary, and it all came in the form of Super Mario Bros. This game is one of the most recognizable of all time. It invented the genre of platformer, arguably, and was one of the first games to break away from the classic arcade high-score-based gameplay past consoles were known for, like the Atari 2600. And now games had definitive endings, which helped them round big stories and create versatile and well-made games. Mario was one of the most iconic names in gaming, even back then, with the Nintendo Entertainment System reaching sales numbers never thought accomplished by a game console. Using really intelligent marketing, it was clear that Mario Bros., being the most popular game on the system, would grow a name for itself. However, as time went on, it was clear Nintendo didn't exactly know how to use their property. Of course, sequels were apparent. Mario Bros. 2 in Japan, known as The Lost Levels in America, the American Mario Bros. 2, which was just a reskin of the Famicom game Doki Doki Panic, and the far superior Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World. These expanded upon that original platforming formula in new and interesting ways. However, Nintendo thought it would be cool to license out their most lucrative IP to any being with a pulse. Speaking as we got Mario in random NES games and Mario Teaches Typing on PC. It took Nintendo a while to realize that this was valuable property. Mario games have always aged quite well due to the 2D games of this style not exactly dying out, especially now with games like Shovel Knight, Celeste, all sorts of games like that. But as time progressed, something would be ready to take the gaming industry by storm. 3D gaming. Those early 3D consoles really made it seem like 2D was just a stepping stool to 3D, a hurdle to overcome. It just kinda happened because of hardware limitations. But with Sony's new PlayStation, it could render out fully 3D graphics, followed shortly by other consoles like the Sega Saturn, Atari Jaguar, and Panasonic 3DO. This meant that big 3D games could finally be a thing. The future of video games was here, and brighter than ever. Kinda. Like past consoles, it was kinda hard to push that new generation. While the PlayStation and Sega Saturn could do 3D, they did 2D a lot better. In fact, this is the generation we saw gorgeous 2D games on these platforms. There wasn't really a push to evolve games. It just felt like what we were getting more of what we did before. This kind of thing has happened before, in fact. Early consoles like the Atari 2600, ColecoVision, and Television all basically were arcades at home, because this is what video games were at the time, simple high-score games. It took a red plumber for people to realize that games could be so much more. It really felt like they didn't know what they were doing. Any game that was 3D at the time took way too many elements from 2D games. Some just being 2D games with a 3D overlay, nicknamed 2.5D. But we now know that video games could be even more. But they just need that push to figure it out. And who else but Nintendo to take the leap? The Nintendo 64 was Nintendo's answer to the PlayStation. Of course, it had a plethora of delays that would cause it to release in 1996, 2 years after the PlayStation. What did they expect us to do? Just sit and wait because, well, it's Nintendo? Of course, what really set them apart was the biggest argument of the generation: cartridges versus discs. PlayStation was now using discs, while Nintendo kept with their traditional cartridges. Discs could hold a significant amount of data, hold high-quality video and audio files, and were much cheaper to produce. However, due to the technology requiring the system to read a spinning disc using a laser, it meant that loading was pretty prominent on the system, and the form factor. While the Nintendo 64 cartridges lacked all those cool features with the ability to boot games up instantly. So, take a wild guess who won. Despite this new form factor being quite better and Nintendo just being stubborn and refusing to use it, Nintendo was still quite confident in the system leading to its launch. They wanted a grade A launch title, so got Shigeru Miyamoto, Mario's creator, to direct this new game. When concepts were being thrown around, they wanted to make the original formula of a Mario game, simple platforming levels where you have to go and get to the end. However, there was a major issue. Past Mario games contained a tremendous amount of levels, almost 100. In designing the game to be a Mario game you can just essentially move back and forth in, the roadblock came from their decision to use cartridges. It would hold far from enough data to contain the amount of planned levels, leading them to have to find a workaround. A lot of time was spent trying to fix the issue, until something came up. Maybe the game didn't need that many levels. If you kept going back to the same ones, then why would you need more? It was brilliant, and development progressed until the console's launch on June 23, 1996. It was one of 2 launch titles, which is just abysmal. Really, it was Mario 64 or Pilot Wings 64. Mario 64 is structured differently than your typical Mario game as previously stated. In it, you travel to only around 10 different larger-sized levels to complete small missions to obtain a star. You can then use these stars to unlock new levels and one of 3 Bowser fights. Defeat Bowser 3 times, and you save the princess and win. While it was similar to a 2D Mario game, it invents new elements not possible in that dimension. Mario has a ton of fun moves to run around the level with. It's honestly crazy how they made something as simple as a character controller to be as so complex and fun. Mario's movement is super well designed. The game just works in so many ways. The console itself was actually partially designed specifically for Mario 64, specifically the controller. As I have said in past videos, I love the Nintendo 64 controller. Everyone hates this thing, and that's unfair due to just how innovative it is. Sure, the wonky shape is off. The analog stick is super flimsy and not that all comfortable, the buttons aren't as satisfying to press, but I can't preface enough how well designed every Nintendo controller has been since the dawn of time. And this one is absolutely no exception. On the PlayStation and Saturn, while 3D games existed, it was hard to warrant them considering the controllers only had a D-pad. When designing Mario 64, they wanted to come up with a better way of controlling Mario's 3D movement that wasn't still stiff and grounded. So in came the genius of Genyo Takeda. He invented the analog stick, something PlayStation wouldn't use at all until 1998, as a response to the Nintendo 64 controller. While a D-pad can go a total of 8 directions, the analog stick can go 360. It was the coolest and most innovative parts of the console and was designed with Mario 64 in mind. Mario's movement in this game is genuinely just the best. It's not too complicated, yet still quite in-depth. Just running around the hub world is great fun. Like I mentioned before, 3D games were just 2D games in 3D at this point. No real push was made, So it was Mario 64's chance to be that, and that's exactly what they did. The incredibly well-designed nature of this classic pushed 3D gaming to be more than just a cool novelty. It could completely change the way games were designed, and the way we experienced them. It was incredible how well one game was able to completely change the industry to the way it was today. So why is this game so popular today? Its graphics and controls, as much as it pains me to say, have not aged incredibly well. It can be confusing at times with no clear direction to go, and it struggles with plenty of other underlying issues that hurt the game even when it came out. Of course, one big reason is that Mario is still incredibly relevant today, and it's clear Mario's first leap into 3D would be of the high interest to people who have never experienced it as a kid. It's also incredibly accessible. It can be run on any piece of modern hardware using emulation. But I think the biggest reason is that, despite all of its drawbacks, it's still genuinely a good game. No matter what, I think that anyone can pick up this bad boy and enjoy it. It captures the imagination of anyone who plays it in a way that other games just don't. Nothing will ever destroy the legacy that this game had, and still has. It inspired incredible works of art that wouldn't be possible without Nintendo coming up with something like the analog stick. Nothing can ever change the legacy this game has, and nothing will change how good a game it still is. While Nintendo continues to raise prices and make tech demos $10, I'm still sitting here enjoying one of the greatest games of all time.